How's it going, everyone? I hope you're having a sweet week. It's official, the crew on Patreon have spoken, and today we're making the wash for Buccaneer Bob's rum. Welcome to Distiller, everyone. I'm Jesse, and this is the channel all about chasing the craft of home distillation and making it a legitimate hobby. So if you're into home distilling recipes, and anything home distilling, this might just be the channel for you. Check it out and hit the subscribe button down below if it is. It's true, it's official, Patreon has spoken, and we're making Buccaneer Bob's rum. I've got the molasses and I am good to go. I have been really looking forward to making rum for a long time now. It just seems so, I don't know, kind of like magical, I guess. There's something a little intangible about the way it tastes, the way it smells, and the method of making it as well. So I cannot wait to get stuck into this. One little bit of housekeeping before we get stuck in. Make sure you check out the link for Buccaneer Bob's recipe down in the description. He has a downloadable PDF that you can follow along with, which is actually written really well, so big props to you, man. I will be following the recipe pretty closely, but I'm going to deviate on a couple of main areas, but I will stick a notification up on the screen when I deviate from that original recipe. If you notice that I've done something different and you know what it is that I've done different, feel free to stick a comment in the comments below so everyone else knows as well. Anyway, onto it. The original recipe calls for a couple of liters of infected dunder. Now, I don't have that because I haven't been making rum at all yet, but what I do have is this. That looks pretty funky, I know. But what it is the last little bit that's left over of the birdwatchers wash, which hasn't been stripped yet simply because, you know, it wasn't enough to put another stripping run on for it. So it's been sitting around for a little while now while I've been getting my still sorted out for the reflux, and it's gone a bit funky. That stuff floating on top, to me, looks like it has potential, and the smell is kind of cheesy and umami, almost like a cross between kind of cheddar and sesame seed oil. So I feel like I'm going to use some of that as the dunder. Maybe I'm crazy. I guess we'll find out. Like you saw before, guys, this fermenter had some funky ass stuff in it before that old wash from the birdwatchers. So while I do agree with the idea of being less staunch about sort of sanitation and everything for distilling compared to brewing, I am going to clean the bejesus out of this thing with some OxyClean, and then I'm going to use some Starsan as well. Now, I'm almost out of this stuff, almost out of it, but I promise you this stuff is awesome for whenever you're sanitizing things for fermenting. And if you are interested in getting some, I'll leave a link down below for the Amazon store. Of course, I am going to drain the 2 liters of Starsan out of this fermenter, but remember, guys, don't fear the foam. You don't have to get all the foam out, and you don't have to rinse. Anyway, now that that is sorted, I can put the molasses into this bucket and start throwing things into the pot to boil. So here's the deal, guys. I am going to be using blackstrap molasses for this recipe, just like the original Buccaneer Bob's recipe. I am, however, going to be using a little bit more. I'm going to be using 5 kilograms of blackstrap, simply because that is the size container that I could buy it in. Now, it's worth noting that I'm using more molasses now because we're going to have to adjust for that later on. But right now, I really want to tell you guys, if you haven't used this stuff before, it is an absolute dog to work with. It's super sticky, and it does not dissolve easily at all. My plan was to get what I could out of the bottle or the jar with the ladle, as you see right now, but then basically put that aside and wait until I've got the hot mixture out of the boiling pot, and use that to get the rest of the molasses out of the container. So I cover the container up, put it aside, but of course I couldn't resist having a little taste. It actually isn't that bad. Next up, we need to boil a few things up in a pot, and I'm going to be using my trusty induction cooker. First up is 2 liters of the live dunder. Second is 1 liter of yeast trube, or 200 grams of dry yeast. I'm using a little of the angel yeast and some of the yeast trube that came across with the supposed live dunder. Last of all, add 1 to 3 liters of fresh water. Keep stirring it as it's warming up towards a boil. just to make sure that nothing is sticking to the bottom of the pot and scorching. While the pot is getting up to temperature and getting ready to boil, what I want to do is think about hydrating my yeast. This is another thing that I'm changing from Buccaneer Bob's original recipe, and today I will be using Safeale BE-256. Hold on. It's that guy there. So I guess you're probably wondering why I'm going to use this, and to be honest, because a friend gave it to me. Thank you, dude. And number two, it's kind of perfect for a rum, actually, as suggested by my buddy. It has no problem dealing to relatively high ABV, and it is also going to kick out, I hope, a fair bit of sort of funky esters, especially along the banana and clove side of things, which I think could be kind of cool for a rum, right? This is a ale yeast. It is a specialty beer yeast, I guess you would call it. And because of that, and because I want to just sort of experiment, I am going to treat this yeast like I would if I was brewing beer. So that means fermenting at a lower temperature and probably fermenting a little bit longer and slower as well. I've also got 2 packets of yeast, and to be honest, if I was brewing beer at this gravity, probably need a little bit more, or I'd probably use a little bit more, I guess. But I'm happy to stress the yeast out in this case a little bit. Just keep in mind this is probably a whole lot less yeast than you tend to see for most distilling recipes. I have some water which is at a touch under 25 degrees, so that's cool. And I'm just going to pop the yeast right into there. Once again, this differs from Buccaneer Bob's recipe quite a bit, but I've used this method for rehydrating yeast for beer for a long time, and I'm really happy with it. Just to note though, guys, this is rehydrating. It is not a starter, so there's literally just water in here. There's no sugar, and I'm not trying to grow more yeast. I'm just trying to shock them a little less when I throw them into that wort later on. I'm going to let this chill while I'm sorting everything else out over there. Let it have a good half an hour, 45 minutes in here, and then it'll be ready to pitch. Let's get back to that pot. So Buccaneer Bob's recipe says to just bring this to the boil and then let it stop. But because I have a fair bit of alcohol in here, about, I don't know, I can't even remember now, but about 10% I think. I'm going to let this boil and simmer away just sort of gently for a little while. Just to get that out there. I don't really need it, I don't really want it, and also to make sure that I get this up to a good temperature to make sure everything in here is dead. I am totally not ready for live bug ferments. So now that that mixture has been boiling for a while, I can use it to help melt the rest of the molasses in the bottom of the container. I don't want to waste it, there's no point throwing it out, so I may as well get all of it into my fermenter. I just rinsed and repeated this 2 or 3 times until the container was pretty much spotless. Just remember, guys, that this is really hot liquid. Don't burn yourself. Obviously, as soon as you're done with that, you can drop the rest of the hot liquid into your fermenter to assist in dissolving the molasses. Just a side note though, guys, if you drop anything into the bucket, forget it. It's gone. You may as well have dropped it in a freaking tar pit. In all seriousness though, it will start to dissolve. Keep stirring and scoop off the bottom to see if there's sludge sitting there, to see if it's dissolving. You may want to add a little bit more water. I was trying to do it with as little as possible just to see what you get. From here on in, it's a game of topping up with either hot or cold water to reach the right volume and the right temperature to pitch your yeast. Of course, you want to keep stirring as often as you can, especially while you can still reach the bottom of the fermenter with whatever tool it is you are using to stir with. Also keep in mind, team, that it's probably not a bad idea to start thinking about getting as much oxygen into this mixture as you can now, even though we're going to give it a really good mix before we pitch our yeast as well. So now we have the second-hand yeast, the yeast cake, the trube, whatever you want to call it, the molasses, and of course our live dunder, which I will be updating in the future, plus most of our water all mixed in here and ready to go. I do, however, have to add the lemon. I'm going to add 3 lemons in there. You guys don't have to watch me do all of these, trust me. And I will give it another really good stir before I pitch the yeast. It's probably also worth noting that, especially with molasses, I'm a little bit worried about the amount of headspace I've got left here. I might end up with a black fermentation fridge. Another key difference between what I'm doing and the original recipe is that Buccaneer Bob suggests to aerate the wort or the mash after you pitch the yeast. Personally, I don't like to do that, so I'm going to give it a really good stir now, and then I will gently drop the yeast in afterwards, pop the lid on, and get this bad boy in the fermentation fridge. So as I hope you can see, the yeast is all frothed up now, which means it's nice and vibrant. We know it's live, and I can pitch that straight in here. You do not, I promise you, you don't need to thoroughly mix the yeast in, especially if you hydrate it like this. It will mix in, and personally I like to be nice and gentle on the yeast. Do as you wish though. And just a little bit of water to get some more of that goodness out of the jar. Now I could put an airlock on this, but I'm guessing it's going to take off pretty quickly, so I'm just going to let it be, and I'm going to let the positive pressure take care of it. It will be in the sealed fridge as well, so I'm fairly confident there won't be any bugs getting in there, and at the end of the day, if they do, I guess they do. It's probably worth noting right now, team, that with a molasses wash, your hydrometers are somewhat useless. Basically, there's a whole lot of unfermentable sugars and other things kicking around in this guy. So your hydrometer is basically, it's going to lie to you. So you really can't do, I guess, a one-to-one conversion from sugar to molasses. It just doesn't work that way. But like I said at the beginning of the video, I have used more molasses than Buccaneer Bob's recipe just because I bought a 5-litre container and I figured I may as well use it. Now I'm guessing that right now this is about an 8% wash. And I am happy to push that a little higher, as Buccaneer Bob's recipe suggests, by adding sugar later on after the yeast have sort of already done some work on this. The original recipe just says to add the sugar in here and stir it until it dissolves. What I'm going to do is make a syrup out of this 1 kilo of raw sugar, once again a little different from the original recipe, out of the least possible water, so probably 1 litre of water, and then I will be able to add the syrup back into here with minimal stirring over the next week. Just to let you know, team, in an effort to get this video out on time, I'm not going to be able to show you the additions of this sugar, at least I very much doubt it, but I will be putting updates of these additions up on Patreon for the Patreons to check out. Alright team, let's get this thing into the fermentation chamber and I can go to bed. So there you have it team, my very first rum wash. Super happy with it. It smells great, but I would love to hear your comments. Let me know what you think, and let me know what you think I should be doing in the future. Anyway guys, I hope you liked the video. If you liked it, make sure you hit the like button. If you really liked it and you're not subscribed yet, make sure you hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya.